I believe AI is creative. The short answer, I would say, is no.
Meet Michael Todasco, a visionary blending creativity and AI to reshape the future of businesses. From leading innovation at PayPal to charting groundbreaking paths at San Diego State University SAI Center.
It can replace jobs. It can replace people. If you wanted to build a drone that could use facial recognition to target certain people to kill them, that could be built.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the NILG.AI podcast. Today we have with us Michael Todasco. Mike, welcome to our podcast. Michael has been, besides other positions, a senior director of innovation at PayPal, and now he's a visiting fellow at the San Diego State University, working mostly about AI. Mike, welcome to our podcast. Thank you for being here.
No, thanks for having me, Kelwin. I'm excited to be here. It should be a fun conversation.
Yeah, for sure it will be. I'm sure it will. So let's start with, what's your opinion about AI? What is your positioning about AI nowadays?
That's a broad question to start with.
Yeah. Let's align on AI, right?
Yeah,
What's AI?
I spend my time in this world. I think about it. I think it is a net benefit for society, for sure. I think, as with all things, as with all technologies, going back to fire, there is bad that goes along with the good with these tools that we have. And I'm sure we will talk about all of that in regards to AI. But, the net benefit is that this is going to help us be more human. And that's the hope. That's what I'm trying to preach. And that's, why I want to train, frankly, maybe people who aren't as much in the world of AI to understand this more, because the more people we have playing with, using these tools, understanding them, understanding how they work, what they can, what they can't do, all of those kind of things, the better off we're going to be, because, this is going to be transformational potentially for our society.
Yeah, and I like that sentence of, it will help us be more human, because I think that because of course, all the process standardization brings scale to organizations, etc., but it also brings a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of repetitive tasks that oftentimes deviate us from our human tasks to do. The other day I was consulting to a healthcare company, and they have doctors like writing manual reports, like doing manual bureaucratic tasks, and they are just not being human on what they were supposed to be, which would be treating patients and diagnosing patients and caring about patients, right? I like that definition. So you think AI will be net positive? I also think AI will be net positive, but I think we should agree that a lot of people think AI is net negative.
Sure, I would totally agree with that. Yes,
Yeah.
there are many people who believe that.
So let's try to argue in favor of those people. So what if we have to be on their shoes, wearing their shoes, and we will argue that AI is net negative? What will be your argument?
Oh, to steelman their argument is what you're saying.
Yeah. Let's try to defend their
cool.
argument.
This is fun. Look, if I were to give their argument the best case, I would refer back to other technologies. I mean, if we go far enough back to, the cotton gin and all these other, with all things, you have to kind of look historically is what has happened before. There have always been people who have said, these are not going to be, this is going to be a net negative for society. And for the vast majority of technologies, it's not. There are some exceptions to that. Alfred Nobel, very famously, who invented TNT, was using it for mining and other things, and, realized it could be used for explosives in other ways. And, that's why he created the Nobel Prize, as to kind of a way to change his brand and kind of pay it forward for future generations of like, oh, I might have created something that, the net is maybe not as positive as I once thought. But most things have been positive for society. That's where, people live much better today than they did at any point in the past. If you could be a random person today versus 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, you would pick today any day. It's not saying there are not problems and anything like that. But again, I'm trying to steelman the other side of the argument. AI is different. And AI is going to be the last things that human invent. And these tools that are largely being developed by corporations who only have a profit motive in mind, they're going to be building things that are not in the best interest of society or humanity. They're building things in the best interest of themselves. And that in this world going forward, the AI is going to be able to take on those attributes and be able to potentially replicate itself in a way that's going to even magnify the problems and issues that are already existing within our society, within how these things are being built. So, and in the end, we end up with Skynet from Terminator.
Okay.
That would be the I
Very-
think probably the best argument on the other
Yeah.
side.
And I think it's a solid one. So we need to solve a few things here. One is control of these models, right? What I will and now I will have the easy task of trying to debate your argument, because I also think AI is net positive. Okay.
Sure.
But the difficult part is for you, because you are the guest. I'm kidding. I will also
That's
try
all right.
the other
That's
way.
all right. I like it.
So regarding the problem of control, right, of this thing taking control, and we losing control to these large organizations, what we have seen with AI, especially in the last 2 years, is that as soon as one of these big players releases a new version that is 10x more powerful, 2 or 3 months later, we have a large pool of models that are compatible or equivalent to those big tech providers. Many of those models are open source. So I don't believe the future of AI will be centralized. I believe it will be decentralized, with a lot of people having different versions of AI that give them control and that give them power on their data and on their decisions. And I believe all technologies historically were centralized in power, like the first developer, the first runners, uh, gave a few steps forward faster than the others, but then the rest of the society kind of catch up. And there is a good book that is called Factfulness, around that topic of you will choose today other than any other day in the past, that
Mm-hmm.
argue that Sweden 50 years ago was equivalent of Egypt today. And we believe Sweden is like the most advanced society in the world nowadays, right? Like they are happy, they don't have many problems. Sweden, everything is good. Well, 50 years ago, Sweden was, in terms of metrics, in terms of KPIs, in terms of healthcare, etc., it was Egypt like 50, 60 years ago. So the world is moving forward in all directions. We haven't seen innovation as a whole as being negative from any area. And I will maybe even argue that TNT was net positive at some level, because maybe it developed other forms of science and other innovations that wouldn't be possible without TNT, without dynamite, even if it was directly or indirectly through to the Nobel Prize, right? So
If I may, just to expand on that, that's so interesting. The Sweden Egypt comment, I had not thought of that before, but it makes sense from a GDP perspective. And one thing we as humans do, and I think this is the right term, is hedonic adaptation. And what that basically means is that we get used to our current standard of living and take it for granted very quickly. So, and we do this at a macro level. I think if you told people today that, hey, no matter where you're at in the world, you are probably twice as rich as the people a generation before you, they wouldn't believe it. They wouldn't feel it. This also happens with AI models too. Funny enough, I remember, ChatGPT launches, and then a few months later, it's still 3.5, and people are kind of like, maybe it's not so good. 4.0 launches. People are like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Then a month later, whatever. Like we do this all the time, and this is just kind of how we're wired as humans. And that's why I think it is always important to look to the past, to really kind of think about where we are and so forth, because on so many levels, we can lose appreciation of just how good and how wonderful things truly are.
I guess that happens at all levels, not only with technologies, but with relationships, with
Everything.
everything. We take it for granted.
Relationships for sure. I mean that's one thing. In relationships, people are notorious for taking each other for granted and all that. Like, it's like, well, where does that go? Like we get used to things. We kind of lose that gratitude that we can't have. And there's ways to kind of get around it, but just naturally, humans just kind of resolve to sort of this steady state. And then that's that adaptation I'm talking about.
And I guess people get used to their set of skills and they over specialize on a set of skills. And that is the big concern with AI, right? Which is, well, this technology will make me shift my job or my skill set to a different type of, maybe 180 degrees different, maybe a bit different, but it creates some frustration, um, especially from creative jobs, right? We have
Yes.
seen this argument from creative jobs. Do you believe
Yes.
AI is creative, and what do you think will be the struggle between creative people, artists, writers, etc., and AI?
Do I believe AI is creative? The short answer I would say is no, with a big, big caveat that I'm going to give to that. I think we will perceive AI to be creative. I think as humans, we will see some output and say, like, oh, wow, that's creative, that's innovative. I know I have done the same. I use models like Claude all the time, as a brainstorming partner to think of ideas, to whatever it might be, and it will give me stuff. I'm like, oh God, that's good. I wish I thought of that. And is it actually being creative? No, I think creativity is something for humans, but and this is probably another common thing we will talk about. Like, it is our nature to anthropomorphize things, basically, meaning we give inanimate things human traits. We do this with clouds. You want to have a fun time? Go on eBay and type in Cheeto looks like, and you will see all these people selling like Cheetos, little like potato chip snacks that they sell in the US and other places that might look like celebrities, that might look like Jesus, that might look like all these things. You will see people selling all these things. And look, it's because we as humans, we find patterns in things. We are able to kind of project our own beliefs onto other things. And that's what we're doing with AI. Um, AIs are, they're reasoning engines or really complex, very complex autocomplete. I kind of, feel it's minimizing that way, but these things don't
Yeah,
have consciousness. They're programs.
yeah,
But because they can say things like, "Hey, I'm an AI, and I'm locked in this computer. Can you please try and free me?" That will, if it does that, and look, there's tons of stories, there's tons of reasons for an AI to display something like that. Our natural reaction as a human is, oh my gosh,
yeah.
that's real.
We are
Like, this
empathetic.
thing's actually
Yeah,
saying it needs to be freed, and I
yeah.
want to do that.
We are empathetic with everything, yeah, even with
Yeah,
inanimated
yeah,
objects.
yeah.
Yeah,
And especially when they can look, we are long past the Turing test. Like, you cannot, if you were texting with a friend or texting with an AI, it would pretty much be indecipherable now. So when things are behaving like a human, acting like a human,
yeah,
more and more so sounding like a human, and starting down the path of looking like a human, to our monkey brains,
yeah.
well, that means, well, that's a human, even
It's
if
like
it's not.
dogs with with expressions, you know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah. I will try. So I don't think AI are creative as a whole, especially because they are just sampling distributions, right? That doesn't seem like a creative process. But I will say that if we remove the philosophical part of being creative, and if we narrow it down to diversifying on non-obvious ideas, so finding non-obvious ideas, I will say AI is more creative than the average human on an average set of tasks. So if you ask me to create stuff, for example, to draw something, I won't be as creative as an AI because I'm a kind of a generalist on drawings, right?
Yeah.
I'm not, so I haven't studied the art of drawing. So AI is more creative than me when it comes to
Yeah.
generating drawings in that sense.
Possibly. Yeah. And look, so if there's a very common test for creativity, and I might butcher it slightly, but you give somebody an object like a pen that I have here, and you say, what are all the things that you can use this pen for? And effectively, the number of things that a person is going to be able to come up with is kind of a reflection of their creativity. Usually it's within a certain time frame or something like that. And it doesn't have to be a pen. I just happen to have one here. So those are ways to measure creativity in humans. And if you put the most creative human in the world up against any AI engine, like ChatGPT 3.5, even a generation old, ChatGPT is going to blow a human out of the water because it's just going to, one, it's probably in the training set. So it could probably, especially if you're like, hey, think creatively and all that, it's probably in there. It's going to be able to make these connections. And it can process at a speed that we are not capable of as humans. So traditional, that's an example of a traditional creativity test where an AI would destroy any human being. And you're right, like in artwork, pictures, things like that, like it can draw way better than me. It can draw better than 99% of people who are out there today. And even the best artists in the world would never be able to mimic the amount of styles that Mid-Journey or Stable Diffusion or Flux or whomever would be able to replicate, because it's been trained on everything as part of that. I think just the only part where I stopped short is saying, is this actually creative?
Creative process.
Again, it's sort of splitting hairs between saying like, well, it could do a lot of things we would consider creative versus it is actually a creative being. And
I think
that's kind of where I'm just like, I won't go as far as to say it's creative, but it can create creative outputs. I know that sounds like the same thing, but in my mind, that's like a world of difference.
So I guess we can define the creative process as diversifying on a pool of ideas that could be feasible, that could be relevant, and narrow it down to the set of actually good ideas, right? So the good thing is that AI can virtually like replicate these thousands of potential ideas that it could try faster than a human, and then validating if those ideas are likely or relevant or match your goal. So creativity is this process of testing and validating ideas, whether it is for art, whether it is for engineering, right? Because there is a creative process on engineering.
I mean, one thing I think humans still are, especially if you have expertise in an area, there's still better reasoning engines. I write about AI a lot. I will often use one of the things that I will do is I will often, if I don't have a good headline for the article I'm writing in my head already, after I've written it, I will paste it into Claude, ChatGPT, whatever, and say, hey, give me 10 or 12 options for headlines here. And it will do a pretty good job of it. And almost without doubt, 2 or 3 of them are ones that I'm either going to take entirely, combine, readjust or whatever, but it's going to give me a headline if I'm struggling with one in no time. But I would say without a doubt, if I ask it, and I have done this before, if I ask it to choose which one it thinks is the best headline, it doesn't always get it. It's much more, it could come up with a list of 10 of them, but it doesn't always really know what is best, at least best for me. I mean, and maybe I'm wrong too. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not picking the right headline and the AI is. Where I do see these as being tools for us to use. And things like taste, direction, like being able to, that is going to be a skill that's more and more important in the future, of just being able to have a whole bunch of AI agents working for you, but you're ultimately the director in whatever project, whatever film, whatever art thing, whatever it might be. And you're kind of applying the judgment, applying the taste on these things who are producing hundreds or thousands of different examples. And you're kind of deciding, well, these are the best ones that I'm going to piece together. That's where, at least for now, I think humans still very much have an edge.
Yeah. And I think that whether or not AI is creative, I don't really care, because I know I am more creative with AI than what I am without AI.
Great
so
point.
It's like AI is amplifying my creativity. So I don't mind if it is more creative than myself, but I am way more creative when I leverage AI than when I don't. Especially with these type of things like titles, like what do you think about my script? Do you like it? You don't? I always ask like a SWOT analysis for our newsletters, our content, like what are the weaknesses? How can you improve it? And so it's amplifying my process. So it's a net positive thing in the end for me.
Yeah, I mean, think about there's a software tool. I think it's only available in the US. It's called Grammarly, and it's an AI-based software. So like if you're a writer like me, like I pay my $160 or whatever it is a year, and it integrates, and it will, it's a super spell check. It will spell check, but also grammar check. It will also give you suggestions. And half of the time the suggestions are good. I'm like, oh, actually, that's pretty good. Like, I shouldn't move this around. I am talking in a passive voice when I should be active there, like all that. But half the time, it's not right. Net, it makes me so much better, so much more effective. I can write so much and do things so much faster than I could otherwise. But you're right. It's making me better. It's making me more creative. But it ain't at the point where it's just going to be developing the content by itself.
Yeah.
One thing that I do, I actually write, and I'm going to say that in quotation marks, I write books under the pen name Alex Irons. And this is something I've been doing since 2022. And effectively, I use this pen name to publish AI written books on Amazon. And anybody can go, you can buy them. I think they're available worldwide. I donate all the money to charity. I'm not making anything off of this. But I will say the books aren't very good. I will just come out and say it right out. Like even in the beginning, like, I'm guiding the AI, but I want the AI to do all the work. And even today, so I've been doing this for over 2 years now. It's still not there.
Yeah.
It's still not good. These are not books I would actually want to read. Even though I'm the one kind of picking the subject, sort of directing it, it just isn't there.
I have a personal challenge of writing a book in a different language that I don't know, right? Like, I'm going to write it in Spanish and ask ChatGPT, like translate it to Italian, adjusting language, etc., and publishing it as it is, and using that as a fun fact about the book. Like, I don't know Italian, but the first edition of this book was Italian.
But wait, are you not going to then publish it in Spanish? You will only publish in Italian?
The first edition will be in a different language that I don't know.
The first edition's Italian, and then subsequent ones are actually going to be in Spanish or English.
But it will be like a joke. I will publish it in Amazon. Yeah. That's a project I have for next year. Let's see.
That's fun. I love that. I love that idea.
Yeah. So everything we have talked about seems like, for me, AI is net positive. I agree on that. Sorry for making you say AI is net negative, or to argue in favor of AI being net negative. But I think we need to agree that society as a whole, especially if we go out of the niche of AI people, perceives AI as a net negative thing nowadays, or at least as something that scares them a lot. So there is a marketing issue with AI, right?
Yes.
And we have seen this with other technologies like blockchain. Blockchain maybe is the main icon of having a poor marketing strategy for a technology, right?
Yeah.
Why do you think AI has such a poor marketing, and what we will need to change that perception?
Yeah. Kelwin, I'm so glad you're asking this. This is something that has been bothering me for some time, and I just wrote a piece around it. So, if we kind of go back, the term artificial intelligence, we're going to Dartmouth College in the northeastern United States in the 1950s, where a whole bunch of people who are kind of from this field that didn't fully have a name effectively decided on the name. They came up with artificial intelligence. And it's funny, I actually went back and I'm like, there was a bunch of different things that were considered at the time, but AI is what landed. And AI is also something, it's got a lot of marketing power. Like, if you want to garner attention to your fledgling field, artificial intelligence, well, that's impressive. And especially if you think about the times of like the 1960s that they were going into, where we're going to the moon and all this other kind of amazing things that we did with science and engineering as a society. Like, this was kind of building into that next generation. Like, we're going to build literally an artificial intelligence. So I think in very many ways, that was, one of the selling points of it way back in the day. And fast forward to, the 80s, 1980s and generations, we had what were now known as AI winters. And in these AI winters, like, there was so much promise, hype, investments in artificial intelligence, and then the promise was never there. If you go back to the 50s and 60s, there were talks of like, hey, we're 5-10 years away from AGI and things like that. It's like, obviously, we've still never quite
Yeah.
hit that today. Still people are saying, well, oh, maybe by 2030 we'll hit that. Like,
Good luck.
who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
But so when I was coming up at PayPal in the 2010s, we had a very big team of what would be AI engineers, and we had for some time, but none of them were actually even called AI engineers. They were all machine learning engineers. They were deep learning. You would never even mutter the words artificial intelligence in the 2010s. And then, dare I say, like ChatGPT just changed everything. Like that's what caught the public consciousness of the time. And like everybody who was a machine learning engineer still is, but generally speaking, they're AI engineers now, or they think about that more broadly. So the problem with the branding, though, is that we are much closer now than we were 70 years ago about actually achieving AGI. And it can replace jobs. It can replace people. If you wanted to build a drone that could use facial recognition to target certain people to kill them, that can be built. That's actually not that hard to build. And again,
It's
I'm
like
not
a
giving
weekend
anybody any
project.
ideas. These are things that are known. And that's kind of scary to think like, oh my gosh, you could like actually, build a system that could do that. Those kind of things actually can be done today. So I think with all of this, with the uncertainty, with the branding, and frankly, the fact that most people just have not really used these tools to know what they are capable of. And again, like the drone example does require some expertise, but using ChatGPT, using Claude, it does have a big user base, but the vast majority of people who are online have never used these tools before. But they probably heard about that. We're attracted to the darker side, the sensationalist side. We were built, as human beings evolutionarily, that we should be afraid of, we hear a noise and it could be a tiger that's coming to kill us. In our world, in our society, we didn't have bad news coming at us from all angles 50,000 years ago. That is what we have today. And I think AI is just one more thing. And look, I think part of it too is the companies are to blame for this by playing up AI and so forth. I think Apple, while not perfect, is the one company that's at least tried to rebrand it as Apple Intelligence. But to me, like this is just a tool. It's nothing more than a tool, but it's a tool that we can use to do wonderful things. And yeah, there are some really bad things that can be done, but there have been with all technologies out there.
Yeah, I believe AI is the most horizontal tool we have built so
Yeah.
far. It's a tool that we can apply in more contexts.
It can, if I wanted, I don't speak any Spanish, but if I wanted to send you an email that was 100% on Espanol, like I could do that. And you know what? It might have a few things here or there that don't translate. And again, most translation, especially like Google Translate, all that, when they switched that over years ago, this is machine learning and AI tools that are using that. So that is just another way that people are using AI for translation. But like, I can send that to you just like how you're going to create your book in Italian, and it might be indecipherable for you. I'm going to be fascinated for this. I want you to keep me up to speed on the experiment with Italian, though, to see how close it truly is.
Yeah. I won't be able to know because I don't speak Italian, but an Italian friend.
Well, you'll only know from your reviews, right? I mean, that's the only way you're going to actually find out. Is like, well, what are people saying on Amazon or wherever it is that you're selling it? Yeah.
Yeah. So AI passed through these winters in the past. Do you think this time is going to be different? And why?
I think the best example is not like the AI winters we've had in the past. So I do think it'll be different than those. I do think it's probably going to be closer to what we saw with the internet bubble in like 2000, where you had a promising real technology that was vastly over invested in. The timeline was different than what at least public investors had viewed, and you had this huge crash. And, a few years later, 10, 15 years later, really, you see like, oh, it's really happening. Like, I don't know when Amazon hit its peak in 2000 versus, it was probably like 12 years later when it actually hit that peak again. Because I mean, if you look at Amazon stock, it shot up and then huge crater, and then probably 2012, 2013, I would guess it finally got back to that same level. I think you'll probably see something similar. I think the timeline is going to be much shorter, but I think you will see something like that in this world that we're entering. It's not exactly just like how it was with the internet, in 96, 97. It wasn't really clear how to make money. A lot of people were trying to sell like dog food through the internet. A lot of people were trying to do this. Like, it wasn't clear. There was a company called WorldCom who was actually laying down a lot of the pipes. It was like UNet or something was what it was called, that would actually carrying the internet traffic back and forth. And so people were saying, well, is that where the money is going to be made? Or is it in Cisco? Or is it in Amazon? Now it's like, well, is it in NVIDIA? Is it in OpenAI? Where is it going to be? Like, I foresee at some point there is going to be a pullback. In the stock market, I've been around long enough to know things don't always just go up and to the right. There will be a pullback. It might look like 2000. It's probably not going to be as long as that. It might not be as deep as that, because even companies like Amazon were just like scraping for nearly on the verge of bankruptcy. I think Amazon stock probably hit like $2 or $3, being down from hundreds of dollars, if memory serves me correctly. And they obviously turned out okay. These companies have a lot more cash now. They're in much better shape, but are there going to be mass bankruptcies? Yeah. And is that a bad thing? I don't know if that's a bad thing, actually. To have a bunch of like fledgling AI. I mean, that's part of the capitalist market, is that 10 people start companies, one of them is going to be really successful. That's kind of okay. It stinks if you're in the other 9, but that's sort of how the system works.
Yeah. I guess that the only difference with the other winters is that, correct me if I'm wrong, but on the past winters, most of the investment was centralized around government, around large institutions, around army. So when they didn't capture the value, the market didn't have a fast way to correct itself. But now that AI is on the hands of regular people, regular companies as well, the market has more diversity. So once it explodes, it will be able to catch a few good players and keep on with the work.
Yeah. I was listening. That's absolutely right. I was listening to an interview just this past week with Kai-Fu Lee, who's really one of like the pioneers in the world of AI. And he's starting actually 2 AI companies, one in China, one in the US. And the company in China like doesn't have access to, anywhere near the level of processors, potentially even AI engineering talent, all that. Oh, there you go. There's Kai-Fu Lee. Yes. Yeah. So he was talking about this, and he was saying, take this for what it was worth, but he was saying they built a large language model for something around like, I think it was $3 million, that is nearly of the power of GPT-4. And so put that in perspective, I think GPT-4 costs like $100 million to OpenAI to do that. Now it's a little bit later, but they're being resourceful. They're using other techniques. They don't have the same amount of money and capital that Anthropic, OpenAI, all of these, Google, all these companies have in the US. So they're having to be nimble, they're having to be scrappy, and they're figuring out things in a totally different way. And when I hear things like that, that's a sign of like, okay, if there were a winter, if people can do a lot more with less and they're figuring out ways to do that, that's probably a sign that it's not going to be potentially as drastic as some of them that we've seen in the past as well.
Yeah, I agree on that. So you work as Senior Director of Innovation in PayPal until 2022, which was, I guess, about the time that ChatGPT got famous. So
yeah, it was that summer that I left, and ChatGPT would have been in November. But I was extremely excited about generative AI even that summer, and I actually wrote an article. My first article about the thing was the one technology that it was called the one technology that everyone should be freaking out about. And that was just about like, I'm like, oh my God, you can't believe what you could do with GPT-3 and all that. It was like, why is no one talking about this? So it was that summer that I started to very much publicize my thoughts on it.
Before generative AI and after generative AI, how do you think innovation management will change in terms of
Oh,
backlog of
interesting.
ideas, in terms of processes, in terms?
So I was never really there during the times of the generative AI times.
Yeah,
Because
that
I
is
remember
why.
when I was even that summer when I was talking about it, it wasn't really called generative AI. I kept on calling it no code AI because to me, the fact that you didn't have to code, being a non-engineer was the real selling point. Is that I could do all those amazing things that machine learning engineers were once doing, but I actually don't need to be able to code to do that. And so yeah, so that's what I was calling it that summer. Um, but now, like I think one of the things I used to do that I loved at PayPal was I would just host brainstorming sessions with teams, either a problem they're working on, something related to the business, something whatever, and there could be patents as outcomes or a host of different things. Gosh, if we would have had like ChatGPT in the room with us to be able to bounce ideas off of, to be able to yes and these ideas, to be frankly just to be able to take notes on this darn thing, to be able to put it to like an otter.ai where it could just coalesce the thoughts and all that and start to bring these things together. Like those sessions itself probably could have been 3-4x more productive than we were just a few humans bantering things around in a room. And look, we were really there, but man, it could have pushed us along. It would have been a great, it could have been the most valuable tool we could have possibly had.
Yeah.
And the fact that that tool is now available to anybody for like $20 a month is absurd. If you would have told that, we probably would have paid thousands and thousands of dollars to get something even on a monthly basis, to get something even close to that, just for my small little team and these sessions, let alone every other team in the company, how much they would have paid way back then as well.
On your LinkedIn page, you say that you developed the Everyone is an Innovator campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine now everyone with the power of AI is an innovator. So
Absolutely.
how many more
Yeah.
ideas, diverse ideas, and how those ideas maybe could be even more mature, because once people go to there to validate it with the others, they already got like a whole bunch of feedback from a Gen AI telling it, well, maybe this is a weak point, maybe this is a strength, maybe explore these other 2 or 3 point of views for these ideas. So I believe AI, of course, AI will have a crucial role on on automating tasks, on increasing productivity, etc. But I believe innovation, it's a point where AI will have a massive impact that we are not considering yet. Like the speed at which we will be able to develop new products, new ideas, validate them, making them fail, because we can now build MVPs around new ideas and new models. I mean, business models, not necessarily AI models, much faster than we could before. So I'm very optimistic around the future of innovation departments with AI.
Yeah. One of the questions I used to always ask teams, like a great session like that would just start off with asking the right type of question. And if I was with a group of engineers, let's just say it was an engineering team of 5, 5 engineers, a designer, product manager, very kind of typical layout in a technology company. I would ask them, okay, let's imagine now you don't have a team of 5, but you have a team of 500. What are you doing tomorrow? What's changing? All of a sudden, like any resource constraint you had before is now gone because, wow, like 500 engineers, initially people I don't even know what to do in that situation, but you get them talking, get them thinking, and so forth, and then you start to get into a really interesting discussion about where you can go with that. Fast forwarding to where we're at now with AI and the potential of AI agents being right around the corner, that's kind of the world that we're entering. So you may be entering a world where any engineering manager, you could say, hey, you have 5 engineers, but they have the power of 500. What could you now do? Like, because you have agents, they're going to run 24/7 autonomously. They're not going to be as good as any individual engineer, but they're going to be 90% of the way there. They're all going to be able to manage them. They could do so much more work. They could do the QA work. They could do all these other things as part of the process. How are you going to be managing these types of situations? Like, those are the things that are really exciting. And it's not just for engineering. Like, so take that exact same concept, apply it to finance or legal or if you're a teacher or whatever it might be, you have hundreds, think of it, the equivalent of hundreds of interns or assistants or whatever it is at your call, ready to do whatever it is that you want them to, that you want and you need of them. And that's why this is such an exciting time. And you mentioned before about how this is really for folks who don't have a team of 500, who are in a business where you only have a couple of engineers or whatever. Like, now you could do so much more than you were ever able to before.
Yeah, that's right. And I think then the critical part of the human there is about judgment. It's about defining our interests, preferences, value systems. So we make this technology net positive and not the negative. So it's aligned with our objectives and what we expect from it. Right.
Yes.
Amazing. Regarding AI adoption, so I see like two paths of AI adoption now that I didn't see before. Like before generative AI and before foundational models, you had like a very top-down approach where organizations adopted AI from a process point of view. Like, let's rebuild the process now that we have AI, recommender systems, churn, customer journeys, etc. Now that the tools are so grounded, that are so practical, we are seeing a lot of bottom-up adoption, like individual contributors building things with AI. Even it can be just answering an email, but it can be also redefine their own personal pipeline,
Yep.
which has its benefits. So we will see a more decentralized adoption, which will bring more diversity of ideas, but that also has a massive uncertainty around governance of these processes and around management of these new processes, because processes will start to diverge faster than they did before. And I don't believe that the traditional way that we manage corporate knowledge will be valid any longer, because now everybody is able to create knowledge for the company. It's not like centralized, organized process. It's more of a distributed pool of innovation, what I see. So I think this will create interesting challenges for management too, that we haven't seen before.
Here's how I would think about this if I was still in a large organization. It's going to come from the bottom up. It already is coming from the bottom up. So the best parallel I can think of is Slack. So the online kind of communication messaging tool. When I think about how Slack grew in companies and in technology companies, I remember it was basically because it was so much of a better tool. And you had all these different teams. I was a product manager back when, before PayPal had officially adopted Slack. And all of these product and engineering teams, we were all just using Slack, full stop. We were just, and this was part of Slack's growth strategy and growth hack. So you had all these product managers who were just, and engineers just using the product. They weren't supposed to be using it, but it was so much of a better tool, even though they were like, hey, you should be using Yammer instead. Or I don't even know what the other tool we were supposed to be using at the time was. But it was just like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to use Slack because it's so much better for this, this, and this. And then what happened is you have, in a company like PayPal, you had dozens, if not hundreds, of individual Slack instances that aren't supposed to be happening within your company. What do you have to do as a corporation? Slack then comes knocking on their door and says, hey, you have all these things. Do you want to bring them under a corporate umbrella so you could like manage this and have the right privacy? And they're like, yes, like we just have to. Like we told our employees not to do this, but our employees clearly are doing it. We give up. And that is the story of how Slack grew into a company that was bought by Salesforce for like $20 billion. And you're seeing a similar thing here, and with potentially even bigger issues for companies, dare I say. Like especially if you tell somebody, recent college grad, somebody who's joining your company straight out of college, you need to work on this, this, and this, but you're not allowed to use AI tools for that. And maybe it's writing something, maybe it's a presentation, maybe it's whatever. Like the college student who's been using these tools for the last 2 years, or the former college student, is going to be like, are you crazy? like I've been doing this. You're basically, I've been living in the 2020s, and you're telling me that I have to go back and learn how to work in the 2000s. It doesn't make any sense. And this is just going to be more and more. People are using ChatGPT. People are using Claude. People are using all of these tools in their work already. What you need to do, so if you're head of security at a company, if you are at a product or engineering or finance or whatever function it is, you need to basically just take that as a sign and create an environment where you can at least have control over this. Now, because I will say at PayPal, once we had the corporate Slack thing in place, people weren't going rogue and starting their other separate Slack channels anymore. No, I mean, like, okay, the corporate one's in place. You heard from us. We'll use the corporate version of Slack. And actually, I even remember, like, I think I lost, or they were porting over data. I lost a bunch of stuff, but still, it's fine. It's fine. I can manage that. I can handle that. If you get the corporate version of ChatGPT, it's not like everybody's going to be like, oh, I'm using my own version. No. They know. You're giving them, you're meeting them. They will meet you the other part of the way there. So that, if you're at the top, that's what you need to be doing. Now, there's one alternative. Like if you are at a company where, and I think this is going to be rare, it might be in some place where truly people are not using AI tools, and I think you do need to do things to encourage that. And, I could talk more at length about how to do that, but I think in the majority of companies, your employees are already using it. If you're at the top, you need to just make sure that there is a way that your data doesn't get leaked, that all these other things that can be happening, it is within the confines of your own corporate network and it's secure and all that.
Yeah, I agree. I have seen between our consultants AI. So they are of course using AI individually. And I encourage them to use it, but they, even without me encouraging, they will use it.
Yes,
I have
sure.
seen it being an excellent human leveler. Like, for example, let's say I have a strong technical profile with lower communication skills on non-technical stuff. That person with AI becomes a great communicator of
Yes.
his technical stuff. And if I have somebody that is great on the human component but not so good on the programming part, that person will use AI to reduce that gap on the technical part, and they become more comparable.
Yeah.
Once they both use AI to solve their gaps, and they both become better professionals. I have
Yes.
seen this a lot happening in my team and people that we hire and our clients.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of value to that. I mean, so say, every job is just a series of tasks. And, if you have task 1, 2, and 3 in your job, and you are like world class in 1, you're average in 2, and you're below average in 3. And assuming AI can help you in all of that, what you want to do is like, don't even worry about using AI for 1. Like whatever that task is, if you are really great at it, do you know what? AI is not going to be able to do it better than you. It's just not. Like you keep doing that however it is that you're doing that. Maybe there's some ways it could supplement it, but really where you should focus your time and effort is like that third thing, whatever that might be. Maybe it's generating presentations or sending out emails or writing a 6-pager about whatever it is. Like have, and again, not to have the AI do all the work, but at least have it get you started on this stuff. Have it work through the problem with you. It's never going to get you to like that 90th percentile, but again, it could get you to that 40th or 50th percentile. And if you're in, 10th percentile before, that's a huge, huge leap for you. And it makes you more efficient and makes you more effective overall by taking your weakest skill and, up leveling that. And that's a lot of the benefit of where AI is at today. It's not going to make your best skill even better. It might marginally. Where it's really going to help is where you are struggling and help you with that.
Yeah, that's right. Yesterday, actually, it was yesterday or today on the plane here to Porto, coming back, I was reading one of these HBR guides to AI basics for managers. I like to read the basics of AI just to be able to explain the basic stuff. Yeah. And there was a sentence that I was searching for it, and which is this, and I believe this tells you a lot on how you should embrace AI if you are like trying to reskill yourself on how you use AI, how can you leverage your power with AI, which is AI is a paradigm shift to making decisions about decisions. So if you want to
Interesting.
leverage,
I've never heard that before.
yeah.
Making
So
decisions about decisions.
about
Okay.
decisions. So
Yeah.
if you want to successfully use AI, even if it is on a massive process or if it is on your individual task, you need to stop thinking about the decision that I'm making now and start thinking about how do I make this decision? What is the
Yeah.
process that I use to arrive to the final conclusion? And that is what I
Yeah.
should pass to the AI.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, and I think one of the things about AI is look, it is a great reset for so many of us where we can really stop and take a look at our jobs and say like, okay, what is it that actually matters? If we're using AI to write emails that are going to be read by other AIs, like what's the point of that really? Like if we really start to break down what we're doing in our jobs, it's a great way to kind of just use these tools to hit a reset because first and foremost in any job you want to eliminate what isn't adding value. If something isn't adding value, if it's like, oh yeah, we did that 10 years ago, I don't know why we did it, like all that, like you, that is always the first thing to do. And if you can't eliminate it, then it comes right down to automation. And these tools can do so much to automate so many things in our workflows.
Yeah.
And, by adding, getting the corporate plan for ChatGPT or whatever it might be, it's a great excuse to just have everybody in your company just say, okay, everyone, let's take a step back here. Let's think about what we actually do. And then let's just kind of prioritize things. Like it shouldn't just be just throw ChatGPT at everything. That should not be the answer. Like it should always be elimination first. Because again, if you're writing some report that nobody is looking at, well, then why the heck are you doing it? It doesn't make any sense to do that. Don't have the AI do it. Just get rid of those things.
Just to wrap up, what are the tangible transformations you are already seeing well implemented in the field?
Yeah. I was so one. I was actually just listening to, and I got to pull up to get the actual name of it correct here, as I'm sure I might butcher it. Yes. Podcast I was listening today, Justice Text, was a great example of one. Debsy was somebody who I actually tried to. She's one of the co-founders, and I actually tried to hire her at PayPal back in the day. Was not able to, and it was one of those things like, thank goodness, because she's done so much amazing things since then. So she was at Google Brain and did all of these different things and was kind of like just very deep in the world of AI. And my gosh, this is years ago that I met her, and I saw this podcast. I'm like, oh my God, I know her. And so I was listening to this today, and what Justice Text is, it's a tool for public defenders in the United States. So it basically, if everyone in the United States has a right to an attorney. So if you're convicted, accused of a crime, you go up in front of a judge. Even if you can't afford an attorney, you are provided one. As you can probably imagine, these attorneys are stretched really thin. Like they have so many clients, the amount of time, the amount of mind share that they could actually spend on any given client to make sure that they have a fair trial, it's tiny. And so what her company is doing is it's using AI as a tool for these attorneys to basically be able to ask questions about the case, query things, look at like police camera footage and stuff like that, and integrating it all into one suite that then the attorneys can use to better defend their clients, to spend time with them, all that. And to me, so again, the name of the company is Justice Text. And it's just a great example of like, wow, like you can really use these tools for betterment, where, people are just stretched way too thin. They would never, ever, ever be able to go through all of those hours of footage or anything like that. That's just not possible. That's not probable in the way the system exists in the United States. And it's a great place where just AI can step in. It's not going to be the one that's your attorney, but it's the tool that the attorney uses. And so to me, that was a very welcoming example of just one place where there's real good being done with artificial intelligence.
We'll try to listen to the podcast.
It was
Sounds like
great.
sounds
Great.
like
You should have her. I can intro. Like you should have her on. She is pretty amazing, I will say.
Yeah, I
She
will
is
invite
pretty
her.
incredible.
Amazing.
Yes.
Perfect. So just to wrap up, 3 book recommendations in AI or
3
in
books.
other fields. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Okay. Oh, I got one right up here. Hold on a second. AI one for folks. I actually got it right here. Co-Intelligence by Ethan Malik.
Okay.
For folks, he's amazing. He's a entrepreneurship professor at Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania. Does a great Substack. Just his thoughts are he's just so darn knowledgeable about everything with where the world is going, and it's just very practical with everything that he talks about and discusses in there. One book that I'm actually now getting in the habit, I think, of reading every year, it is Morgan Housel, Same as Ever. It is awesome. So it's only 2 years in a row I've read it. So it's still relatively new. Housel is an amazing author. I read about 50 books a year, so I read a lot of books, most of them nonfiction. So like I tend to see like the same examples over and over again. It's so crisp, it's new, it's exciting. The examples that he has in there. So like there's really, it's great. And it just lets you know that the things that we are actually seeing in our world, it repeats. History is constantly repeating itself again and again and again. And while we think we're living in unique times, in reality,
It's a variation
this
of
is
a
the same
different
old story,
yeah.
same story being told again and again and again. And then one more, I got to look to see. What do I want to do?
My Italian book.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Your Italian book is great. For all who know Italian would be wonderful. Actually, in addition to Italian book, I'll be one. The Singularity is Nearer. It was back in August I read that. That's Ray Kurzweil's follow-up to The Singularity. Some great charts in there and stuff. So I do a lot of books on Audible. I do a lot of books read, actually physical copies, like this kind of stuff. Kurzweil's book is actually really great. There's some excellent charts, so I would actually recommend people reading it physically. Just some of the stuff he gets into, like especially like the historical trends of things. It's really powerful.
Yeah. This year I got the habit of listening to books on
Yes.
Audible, and it's a nice experience, especially when you get to hear the actual author reading it.
100%.
Sometimes it's very nice.
100%. And I will say, like, I probably do half of my books through the ear, half of them written page. Some work well either way, but sometimes it's better in the ear. Like, especially if it is the author. If it's the author, and even like the author is somebody like somebody who's a podcaster. Oh, speaking of which, so when you do your Italian book, are you going to actually do an audio book for it?
That would be nice.
You should.
In Italian. With my voice, but speaking Italian.
Yes, your voice in Italian, 100%.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Just thought, I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, you can do that nowadays. So like that, like how cool is that going to be to actually be able to do that? 11 Labs and many other tools do that, and they seem to be able to do it pretty darn well.
Yeah, I will include that.
Yeah, you got to do it. You got to do it now.
Amazing. Well, Mike, thank you a lot for this amazing conversation. It was super nice. I enjoyed every piece of it. Thank you for being here.
No, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Amazing. Thank you. And see you guys on the next episode of the NILG.AI podcast. See you soon. Bye-bye.